Do you have a brilliant startup idea but are stuck in the launching phase? Are you feeling overwhelmed by funding, marketing, or just where to start? Don't let your startup idea stay grounded. Visit our website at eapla.com to schedule a Blue Couch meeting and launch your startup journey today.
All right, welcome back to On The Cusp. Matt, you're back with me. And today we got Andrew Crawford with Rhino Coffee and a lot more, okay?
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming. So what is Rhino Coffee?
Rhino is an independent coffee shop that we started 12 years ago. I'd been back in Shreveport. There was just Starbucks, but there was not a presence of an independent local coffee shop. And in my time away from Shreveport, I loved coffee and loved getting to hang out in coffee shops. Specifically, our first one was a coffee house because it was literally an old house. And I felt like that was more inviting.
And where was the first one?
Southfield Road.
That's right.
It was the old Sue Payton's dress shop,
That's
which
correct.
a lot of people bought wedding dresses there and other things.
All right, there's an old story that's been told around Shreveport for a long time, for at least 12 years, if that's when Rhino opened, that a young Andrew Crawford was sitting in a bush in some native African country, and a rhino walked past him, and he was inspired by the beauty of the rhinoceros to build a coffee shop named Rhino Coffee. Is this total marketing BS, or is this a real story?
Well, it's been embellished a little bit. I was in Nepal. So I think my father told me to go take a trip because he said, you'll never leave Shreveport again if you start a small business. And he was pretty correct. And it didn't inspire me to start a coffee shop. We were already trying to. I just didn't have a name.
I love it.
So there is some truth.
So there is some truth.
Everyone thought I was crazy, like that was a horrible name.
But it's pretty iconic right now. When somebody says Rhino, okay, I know. Where you want to go? You are downtown or?
It's a great name for a coffee shop.
Well,
a cool thing.
And Bob Griffin used to just call it Rhinos, which I always thought was fun.
A funny thing that Andrew's told me a lot is that, like, when you're in a Rhino, especially uptown, there's little rhinos everywhere. And people would just drop them off?
We had people drop them off. We also had people move them or steal them. So some would disappear, others would come back. It was pretty entertaining.
Oh, that'd be neat. That'd be neat. You'd take the rhino out, like they used to do the little things and take the picture of it. Okay.
So we go through phases where we have tons of little rhinos around, and then we have none because someone's stolen them, and then they start coming back. So it's a funny little...
You're starting something, you watch.
That time 12 years ago was such a cool time in Shreveport. It was like nobody talked about it. A lot of people didn't even know each other at that point, but a lot of cool things were opening,
there was a lot of fun
together.
stuff. There was Great Raft. I remember I think Maryland's had just opened.
Grant was kind of getting going. My business is 11 years old. I mean, there's a lot of movement around that time.
Yeah.
And at the time, I did not feel like any of us were that young. But looking back, we were pretty young.
We were all pretty young. I actually had to sell wedding dresses for 3 months because my application got held up in MPC. And I was delayed, and I was talking to my landlords, and I was like, I really I can't start yet. And they're like, well, that's fine, but we're not going to charge you rent yet, but we're just going to send some brides over, and we need you to unlock the doors, because Sue Payton's had already closed.
So they were coming to pick up the dresses they were
would try
ordering?
them on, see if they liked them, and it was just entertaining, because a couple of them started haggling with me on the price. I was like, these aren't my dresses. The price is what's on there. I don't care.
I need this dress.
You're talking to the wrong guy.
So that was the story I thought you were going to bring up.
The coolest thing in the early Rhino days to me that was so much fun being in that entrepreneurial time was that you officed with Crawford Design above Rhino.
Yeah.
And it was just the flow up and down. I know it was chaos for your world a lot, but
It was. I didn't get a lot done. It was a little
But
more
you did.
challenging. I did, but
It didn't feel like it at the time.
It didn't feel like it. It felt like I was always split focused. So that I remember the office times. It was fun though.
I mean, I remember one time we were like in the middle of making the magazine, chaos, and I walk up there and Scott has a box under his desk and it's full of cats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are there all these cats in
He had
here?
found
Like,
a bunch of cats under the house.
I mean, it was like chaos like that all the time.
It was controlled chaos.
It was awesome.
And then we started roasting coffee up there, and that was even crazier because we were carrying 100-pound bags of coffee upstairs, and that was the year when I think our roaster spent 50 hours roasting for one coffee shop. And that's when we're like, we need to expand this. We need to get a bigger roaster. So
that was really the point where you realized, okay, we're ready to grow.
Because what we did initially was we bought all our coffee from Texas, and we were struggling because we weren't completely satisfied with the quality. And then also just the concept of sending thousands of dollars to Texas. I was like, how do we do this differently? And ironically, we hired a guy who had roasting experience and a roaster. So we bootstrapped that and got it started above the coffee shop. You could see the smoke coming out of the top.
That's when I realized, like, coffee, making a cup of coffee and roasting coffee beans does not smell the same at all.
No.
It was a weird...
So you were buying the raw beans, bringing them in, you were roasting them yourself.
And then taking them back downstairs.
Taking them downstairs to brew coffee.
That was when we had one location. So we realized that we could never scale the roasting with the equipment we had, because for one location it took one guy, and in December it took him 50 hours.
You were pretty much running a design company above a coffee shop, roasting coffee in the same, and a guy was living up there too. like
We're trying to get creative ways to pay the rent.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the
definitely,
best days
definitely.
ever. I mean, that was awesome.
So what was the biggest challenge to getting launched in Shreveport?
I still remember I was pretty young and didn't completely understand all the permitting, all of the logistics. And then my favorite thing is the first year we're like, oh my gosh, we broke even, this is great. And then we got our property tax bill. And I had no concept that you have to, I'm like, I don't own the building. Why am I paying property tax? And it had never occurred to me that you pay property tax on movables in a business. So I think just I'd worked in a coffee shop. I'd been a manager in a coffee shop. What about inventory
tax? Did they hit you on that?
They hit me with that too. So the first year was not a strong year.
Right. You thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to break even, and you got your taxes.
All those random taxes got us a lot. I remember one of our first Derby days, maybe it was the second one, and we were like, we finally made money on one of these events, and they changed the law that year that you had to pay sales tax on tickets. And I think we had made $6,000, and our sales tax was like $5,900.
So I think that was the challenge, and that's why I try my best. If anyone ever calls me and says, well, how did you do this? How did you do this? I stop and talk, because that was a challenging aspect for me of like getting through all the permitting processes, getting through the MPC.
I'll tell you, 12 years later, guys, I have the same challenge with entrepreneurs that come in. And I can't say any names because I don't want them to get singled out. Okay, but we still have that problem in Shreveport.
There's
no one-stop shop.
It's not getting better. I mean, like, I've gotten a lot of permits, like, over the years, and I've gone to those desks, and I know every one of those ladies and stuff, and unfortunately, like, 10 years later, I would say it's the same thing. There's no progress. I still wait for 24 hours so they can print the permit out. I don't understand why the printer only works in the middle of the night, but it's still there. You know, I don't know how we get better at that.
Yeah, and that has been a challenge, and it's unfortunate to hear that it doesn't seem like it's streamlined at all. And I don't have an answer for how to streamline it, because it's multiple different departments.
It is.
So, I mean, it's just that was the challenging part. And I remember going to talk to the sales tax.
The thing
people.
I hate is I never know until I don't know. All right. Oh, you got to have that. Well, why didn't somebody tell us? We just spent 12 hours with you getting this piece, and nobody told us we had to have that piece. Okay, and it's a real struggle. I think for us to grow and move to the next level, all right, we got to figure that out.
We have a lot of people over time that are put in positions in the government, whatever, to go sell our area to people, to bring in, economic whatever. But maybe we need a person that's job is to work with the business person that's trying to get open and help them make it work, make it easy, be excited for them, get them through the process. That seems like a gap.
The small businesses, I mean, everyone, they love tax incentives, but it's not like it's GM. It's not like it's,
right.
We're not having to get a certified location. They just need help.
Get it done.
They need help navigating the process. There needs to be, and I've talked to, Tim Magner at the chamber on a regular basis about a navigator. How do you navigate this? Okay, who has that function?
In that
to
time,
do that?
every day is money. Every day that it takes, I mean, Andrew, you could speak on that more than anybody. Every day that it stalls out,
well, that
costs you money.
Costs more money. But I mean, another not gotcha moment was we got audited by the sales tax our first year, and realized that we bought all this coffee equipment from Washington State. Well, they didn't charge us sales tax on it. We didn't self-declare sales tax because I had no idea. I thought, oh, I bought it out of state. It's no sales tax. So that was another hit. Hey, you're buying all your equipment from out of state. Make sure you self-report your sales tax because they will find you eventually, and that'll be a bill. I'm just thinking of random stuff just while you're sitting here. Talk about your second location, because that was a wild second location to go into that was a major project. That was a major project. That was interesting because we were not necessarily looking to put a second location in at the time. We were looking to get a roasting facility. We needed a roasting facility. And a developer who bought the Sears, I don't know if he bought it or they gave it to him in exchange because it was city-owned for renovating it. He desperately wanted a coffee shop. And I said, I'm looking for a roasting facility. And he said, well, I'll give you a roasting facility over here if you put a coffee shop on the bottom floor. And we went back and forth. And I said, I mean, he underwrote a lot of it because he really wanted the coffee shop. He wanted an amenity in the bottom floor of this building. And I thought that was interesting because he didn't have to. He didn't. I mean, he could just white box it and put a for rent sign. But he really cared about the atmosphere and the amenities of his building. And we got building out, and it was funny because he was like, "What countertops are you putting here?" And I was like, "Well, we always do steel because it's the cheapest, and I'm on a budget." He's like, "Nope, I'm doing granite, and I'll just pay for it." So I mean. He came into some troubles, lost the building, but I still think for all his troubles, we have a gorgeous Sears building in downtown Shreveport that's fully occupied. And if he hadn't come to Shreveport,
it wouldn't have happened.
And that was so random. You were running Rhino and like doing all the stuff, whatever we were doing. And then all of a sudden you were flying on the owner of Tipitina's private plane back and forth to New Orleans. I forgot who called me, but they said, Roland wants to meet with you about a coffee shop. So we sat, it was kind of ironic. We sat in the top of the original Rhino. That's where you had your first meeting with him?
I was super anxious because like our desks are filing cabinets with doors on top and like all of our chairs are mismatched. And I'm like, I'm meeting with this guy who owns a jet.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was very down to earth and just he took 3 buildings that were 2 of them were slated for demo and renovated, because not a ton of people know that he owned the 2 buildings right next to it too. And they're all occupied in one way or another.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, you go in, you guys went into that Sears building right there on the corner. You changed the whole dynamics of that block, and look what happens.
That's one of the things that people don't talk about a lot. Like he, ran into troubles, all kinds of things happened. He's, all those things. But him taking those leaps and doing all that changed what downtown Shreveport looks like for sure.
Well, and it struggled. I mean, it struggled during COVID. It struggled to get started. But I mean, there were some days when I was like, I would have called you crazy if you were like, you're going to keep it open. But it's really, I mean, we've developed a base down there due to the customers and due to the customers being willing to walk a few blocks or deal with parking or anything like that.
I mean, everybody's had an early morning meeting downtown right there now. All right.
We love it.
And it's one of the things that I always think about Shreveport, like if someone was visiting and they saw X, what would that look like? And Rhino downtown is a huge plus for somebody being down there and at least seeing some action in a spot you could go into. I mean, it's definitely made downtown
Well,
better.
the whole coffee industry's kind of changing now. I mean,
Really
12
is.
years ago, I mean, in Shreveport, it was either you guys or it was Starbucks. Now,
there's a lot.
there's a lot going on there. Okay,
There's a lot of quick service.
There is.
Scooters and
I'm not going to give any names. They hadn't been on the show, and they're not backing Matt and I, so I'm not giving them any time, and you don't have to either.
Talk about where
All right?
you are on the retail side. You're still selling in Whole Foods?
We're still selling in Whole Foods. We had to step back a little bit on because we're still trying to identify our territory. But we're selling in Whole Foods. We're in all the Louisiana Whole Foods. And then
When he got in New Orleans, Dave, I was in New Orleans, and Andrew had just gotten his coffee in the New Orleans on Magazine Street Whole Foods, and I was like, I'm gonna go down there and buy it all. So I went and I bought all of it off the shelf, so Whole Foods would think it was hot. I gave it to everybody down there.
we were doing some creative.
I mean, it's like we gotta make them think they're
I would
flying off the shelf.
I had to do a trip. I went to Lafayette, Baton Rouge, Metairie. I never made it to New Orleans. I was so tired at the end of that. But I introduced myself to everyone, and then I'm like, well, let me buy y'all some coffee. And so I'd buy like the purchasing people coffee, because I was like,
awesome.
A, that runs down our inventory, and they'll reorder, and B, they'll get to actually try our coffee.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if they're ever walking
That's
by,
what that's really about.
and someone says, hey, is this good? The way we got in there, it was very easy to get into Whole Foods Shreveport because we were local. We were having a lot of trouble getting into the other Whole Foods. And I still remember Whole Foods called me in the middle of COVID, and they're like, what's your capacity? I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we're having supply issues with some of our other vendors. And they're like, we want to pick you up into some of their stores. I'm sitting there thinking, I got 2 stores closed. I mean, I got whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that we picked up the capacity where I think what really worked is coffee is so habitual. You show up, your product's out, but there's Rhino. And you're like, well, I'll try it, because it's just on the shelf.
I've noticed in Whole Foods, like where they used to have a ton of different brands.
Yeah, they're dwindling it down.
I mean, it's you and maybe and their brand, and then you and maybe 1 or 2 others at the most.
They're whittling it down. They've whittled us down too. We used to have 8 SKUs in Whole Foods. I think now we have 6 or 5. But they basically gave us a threshold of like, and part of that was with the Amazon model. They're like, if you're not moving X amount of units, we need the shelf space.
Yes,
for something
correct.
else.
It's all about the shelf space and what's moving.
And
entrepreneurs got to know that going in.
Well, and the other thing, which I didn't think about, like we had 2 medium roasts up there. And they said, well, we're going to cut the one that's selling less and make the assumption that someone's just looking for a medium roast. So if you got 2 and you cut B, they're still going to come buy A. And they were right. I mean, they were very strategic about it. And I mean, you could tell.
So they've really been a good partner then.
They've been a good partner. I mean, they beat you up on price, but they help you. Every 6 months we have to put all our coffee on sale at Whole
Now,
Foods.
you did that negotiation local?
We did a local before Whole Foods was bought out. So we never had to negotiate with Amazon.
It's a cool thing though to like. It's a cool look. It helps you look like you've made it to the next
And it exposes us
It's
to
good marketing. You see it on the
other
shelf.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So, Andrew, what's next with Rhino Coffee? What are you guys looking at doing?
Stabilize.
Good luck. Let me know how that goes.
We just finished. I mean, we're just about year 2 into the 3rd store. So I think just kind of taking a breath and making through some of the issues we've run into with now having 3 stores is like we have 3 different sets of people making all of our product.
Right.
So our goal right now is consistency, quality, making sure that we can hold that because we have had troubles not holding the quality at 3 different
Have you
stores.
ever had any problem recruiting employees?
We've gone through phases, and we have to get creative on how we recruit. But right now, I think we're fully staffed.
Have you ever? Is it hard to recruit somebody into Shreveport?
We've never recruited people into Shreveport.
All right. So you've always recruited from within.
From within. So, and we have either a college kid, high school kid, or recently graduated.
Hey, tell me about, so number 3 is your first drive-through.
It's the first drive-through.
Did it make as big of a difference sales-wise as you thought it would?
No.
Really?
No. But I
Because
mean,
we always said,
we always thought,
everybody thinks
you're gonna
drive-in is
just-
king.
It'll do triple.
well, we made some assumptions, and I was looking at them the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, how was I so wrong? I mean, the South store does about 20% more than downtown. But we made some assumptions that with a drive-through, it would overtake our original store that's been open 12 years. And they were wrong. I mean, and we did.
So you think that's new? That's new customers in the South store?
It's either new, there's probably a little bit of cannibalization, but I think we just assumed we were looking so metrically of, well, here's the traffic count on Southern Loop. The average saturation rate is 10% or 7%. We're going to cut that in half to be conservative and say that we're going to get 2.5% saturation rate.
I love the fact that you're metrics driven and you looking at them and really making decisions and update them, because what normally happens is they don't go back and update them.
They don't know, right. And so we went back and said, okay, we're getting like 0.5% saturation rate. And so we were wrong on that. But coffee, I mean, you don't typically change coffee shops unless there's a new one or unless you have a bad experience or there's some issue. So it's once you convert a customer and they have a good experience, then you got them. But it takes a minute to convert.
Yeah, I mean, I am an Uptown Rhino loyalist. I mean, I've probably been in there, some years, probably 300 visits a year type, visitor. But it is weird. Once there's another one, I bet it cut me down to, I bet it took half my visits to Uptown.
Well, and to answer your question on the drive-through, we're not known for our speed.
Right.
So, and one of the issues is you look at Starbucks, they've got a machine that's 3 times a price tag that's pretty automatic. We have a manual machine. So if you order a latte, you see the guy grinding the coffee, tamping it, putting it in the machine, steaming the milk. And it hadn't been horrible for drive-through, but it definitely slows down our speed. And if someone's driving through a drive-through, it's because they're in a hurry. Right. So, I mean,
they got to be someplace, but they still want their coffee.
They still want their coffee. So we have hit some flack for that, but we knew that going into it. We knew that this is going to be challenging.
It's almost like you want to put a sign right there where they're ordering, this is handmade, okay? But still, it wouldn't matter.
And they've done an amazing job.
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched them with their headphones on, and I mean, they're moving. But they can sometimes only move as fast as the machines.
As fast as the machines can go. That's a definite.
I want to ask you about this because it's interesting. You're probably the first person that we've talked to that has 3 locations in 3 very different parts of Shreveport. What do you see there? Is the customer the same? Is it a very different customer? Like, how different are parts of Shreveport from each other?
I think they're different. We haven't been open long enough to really pinpoint the Southern Loop customer base. I mean, the downtown customer base is, we see a lot of med students, we see a lot of studying, and then we see business meetings, we see people running in before they got to be at work, or, I mean, the jury comes in. We work with the courthouse to feed the jury, and we have about 30 minutes to feed 14 jury members, or how many
that's
ever,
awesome.
maybe it's 12. But so, I mean, it's interesting because we sell dramatically less retail coffee downtown than our other store.
Really?
And we started thinking about it, and like, well, if you're on your lunch break, you don't want to grab a bag of coffee and carry it back to your office. But if you're at Uptown on Southfield Road, you're coming home from work, or you just dropped your kids off. I mean, it's easier to throw a
There's
bag of
more
coffee.
people just
Yeah.
hanging in there
Yeah,
like,
that
for
is.
long
That's
periods
interesting,
of
but
time.
that's a great question. I love that question.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, we notice meticulous things about that. Like,
How do you make money when somebody comes in, and I'm guilty of this for sure, comes in and buys a $4 cup of coffee and they stay for 2 hours?
we don't. I mean, but that's part of the atmosphere.
that's what you want.
It.
You want that type of.
I mean,
That's most coffee shops, but the goal, and I remember speaking to Bob Griffin, I did an interview with him years ago, talk about how we wanted to do like communities, see people having meetings, book studies, all sorts of things. And he's like, but what about the coffee? And I was like, well, yeah, the coffee's great too. But I had completely forgotten to bring up the coffee.
Bob Griffin was like early day Rhino. Like that was, I mean, you knew who was going to be in there between like 8 and 10. You knew Grant was going to come through. You knew I was going to be there. Jason Brady, Bob Griffin, like the Bias was going to come bobbing through there. I mean, that was such a fun
Everyone had their routine.
time.
It's
Yeah.
still pretty fun though.
Yeah.
It is. I will tell you this, and I've said this a lot over the years. My business is where it is today and has grown because I hung out at Rhino. I heard about more things happening around town that I ended up getting involved with, or made more deals, or talked to someone. I bet if I have 25 clients today, I bet my first meeting with probably 20 of them was in Rhino Coffee.
Yeah, that's a good
know,
deal.
like-
And Andrew, thanks. This
Thank
has
you.
gone so fast.
I know.
Okay? This
We
is
didn't
really
even get
good.
into all the other stuff.
Yeah,
you
we
did.
didn't get into all the other stuff you're doing.
Well, I was trying to drive the narrative, so you didn't ask me
Any more hard questions like that?
You know,
all right.
so you got to go back to, you got to go out of the country and come up with the next idea.
Yeah. Go on a trip. All right. Thanks.
All right, perfect.
Enjoy the podcast? We would love your feedback about today's show and who you think should be our next guest. Send us an email at info@eapla.com. Also, be sure to share the show and leave a comment on our social media post.